Welcome to this Coastal Georgia Genealogical Society presentation. My name is Stacy Cole. Today we have an interview with Amy Hedrick, a local genealogist/historian who has been researching coastal Georgia for over 20 years. Amy is originally from Indiana and only recently discovered that she has Georgia ancestors, but she has helped countless others with their coastal ancestors through her website, glengen.com, and her Facebook group and page of the same name. For many years, Amy has uploaded abstracts, transcripts, and indexes of cemetery, church, court, and other records for coastal Georgia genealogy to her website. It's called glengen.com, but it covers Camden, Brantley, Ware, Wayne, and McIntosh counties as well, and it has information you won't find elsewhere. Many of you know her name and you know her work, but you may never have met her because she's worked nights for years. Even if you have met Amy, you may not know the story of how she got started doing this research. Amy was kind enough to sit down for a recorded Zoom interview recently, right after a night shift, so that we could all hear how she got started, her experience in creating the website, and more about her coastal Georgia research. She's someone I've admired for a long time, so I'm really happy to be able to bring this interview to you. You can contact Amy through her webpage or Facebook group. She's extremely generous in helping people, but please be patient. She gets a lot of requests, she has a full-time job, and she has health problems that have recently worsened and created vision problems for her. So now let's listen to the interview. Okay, it says that it is recording. So, Amy Hedrick,
Hi.
You have been doing this for over 20 years, and I don't see how that's possible looking at you. And also, I understand your family is not from this area.
No,
So how on earth did you get started, late teens, early 20s, doing genealogical research?
I was early 20s. I was about 23 when I started. Um, in 2001, I moved to Brantley County. And my ex, he was going up down the dirt roads on his dirt bikes and going through the woods. And he came across this cemetery in the middle of nowhere. And he's like, come rushing home. Oh, you got to see it. You got to see it. All these real old tombstones. So that turned out to be the McDonald Cemetery off of Post Road in Bladen. And it's the cemetery for the enslaved that were enslaved by the Scarlett and the McDonald family. So I photographed it and started writing the stuff down because I was already in genealogy with my own family. And I started that when I was about 17. And I was like, well, maybe this is online because not too much is online yet. But I started, Ancestry. I was probably one of the first members of Ancestry.com. And then the Gen Web, that started coming in online, which, is all volunteer people putting websites together. And I was like, well, maybe Glenn County has one. And it does, which is Susan Gay Peterson, who's also on my Facebook group. And she had Glenn County and I think Liberty County too. And I was like, maybe she's got this cemetery transcribed. And she did have the Scarlett family and probably just a handful of others. And I was like, maybe she'll put this online for me. So I contacted her. She's like, oh yeah, I'd love to put it online. Here's what you need to do. So she gave me the notes on how to transcribe and, don't put stuff on the tombstones, don't press on them, things like that. And try to photograph them and center them in there and get a close up. And it's like, all right. So I started doing that and putting cemeteries online for Susan. And the reason I started with Glenn County was because my own family history, I just kind of got at a brick wall because nothing was online.
Right.
So I was not in Indiana. So I could just hop over to the courthouse and look something up. And back then there weren't a lot of volunteers. And Indiana was like the worst state at the time to get someone to help you research. Now it's like the most awesome state. I mean, all the records are online. It's amazing. And since I couldn't get past anything, I've written letters to the library. They're sending me stuff. And I'm like, I just hate doing this because I don't know if they're looking as well as I would look,
Right.
And it turns out they weren't at the courthouse. But since I couldn't get anywhere, I thought, you know what, I'll pay it forward. since there's nobody out there to help me, I'm going to help others who can't come to Glenn County. And maybe one day someone will be out there for me to help me. Not yet. Since 1997, I have yet to find someone to help me like me. I haven't found an
Right.
Amy in Indiana. And even all my cousins there, you know, they like to hear the stuff, but they don't want to go look for anything for me. So I'm like, whatever.
So
So I started doing it for Glenn County.
what do you think got you interested in it at such a young age?
My grandmother, my mom's mother. I didn't have a great home life, and I spent a lot of time with her and my grandfather. And he would take me out in the woods shooting and fishing and hunting. And then grandma would take me around the house cleaning and cooking and going to the cemeteries to water the graves and, you know, replace the plants. And she would walk by each tombstone and tell me who they were and how they related to me. And she told me a few family stories, but you know, you're a kid, you just don't really commit it to memory. Yeah, okay, neat. So one family story I always remembered was that her father, my great grandfather, left his wife, which was her mother, because he wanted to go live as a hermit in the woods. I'm like, okay, well, sure. It wasn't until recently that I found him in the census and realized, yeah, he did separate from her when the 1940 census came out. I was like, he's not living with her anymore. And she remarried. And I just recently found that. She married in Ohio and then went back home to Indiana. So I was like, well, that's kind of a neat story. And I always remembered it. It was just always in the back of my head. And I had this DNA match pop up a few months ago. And they'd never had a tree online, no biography on their username. And it was a username too, so you didn't know who it was.
Right.
You know, like Googly Eyes 12. Well, who are you? So, you know, a few weeks go by, a tree comes in. And it's got, you know, just, I think it went back to her grandparents. And I'm like, well, that's no help. It shows that we're almost like a first cousin match. We're close.
Wow.
And I'm like, these names are not in my tree. And, you know, my DNA proved my genealogy right. No surprises. You know, everything I studied, everything grandma told me, DNA lines it all up, except for this woman. I'm like, well, okay. It's just probably one of my grandmother's cousin. There's like a million of them. They're the Dooley family. They're everywhere. I'll just, you know, eventually something will come of it. So she finally put a biography up. And she says that she was adopted. I'm like, oh, well, this makes more sense to me now. So I emailed her, says, you know, you're related to a lot of my cousins from my grandmother. I was like, have you know anything about the Dooley family? She's like, I don't know anything. I just found these names recently. And she's like 70s, in her 70s right now. And just learning this. And I was like, well, I have a feeling that you are probably my aunt or my grand aunt. She goes, there's no way. I was like, yeah, there is. My great grandfather left his wife and went to live in the woods as a hermit. But I'm thinking grandma told me that to be polite. And he was really out patting around and great grandma threw him out. And I was like, she's like, I don't know anything about research or how to do this. I don't know about DNA. I'm like, well, if you'll share your kit with me, let me show you something. So she did. I popped it up, pulled this tree up. She goes, oh my God. I said, now let me show you pictures of my grandmother. Because when I saw her Facebook page, her cover photo, all I could see was the bottom part of her mouth. I was like, that's my grandmother's mouth right there. Wow. And her and my grandmother are sisters. They're half sisters. And she never even, I said, you've got a big family now. You've got hundreds of cousins.
I love those stories.
I said, here's this Facebook, you know, the Dooley cousins, sign up and you're going to meet everybody.
Yes.
Get this huge family.
Yes.
And, you know, all the siblings are dead on this family, but she did have one half brother that's still living. That was the same mother. So she did get to meet one brother, which is not my family. Right. I think this woman may have been bipolar or a woman of the night. So she had a lot of men in her life.
Right.
And they were all older men. And that's one thing she couldn't understand. She's like, your great grandfather was like 70. There's no way he's my dad. I'm like, well, men can have kids up until the day they die. So a 90-year-old man having kids is not really a big deal. It happens.
Right, right.
So I built her tree up for her and everything. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. She was on the wrong path. She was stuck for months
Wow.
because she had these names from a birth certificate. It's like, you just got to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Don't hold
What
fast to those stories or what that document says.
what I love about what you've done too is that, so this was for someone in your own family,
Yeah.
but you've done a lot of this for people who have coastal Georgia ancestors,
Oh yeah.
you know, with no real connection. I know
Yeah.
I think you discovered a
This is probably
connection
like the
later.
only person I've helped with my family.
Right, right.
Excuse
And,
me.
and so when you went into Glynn County, did you find a lot of records there? Were you you know, you probably spent a lot of time at the courthouse at the beginning.
Well, when I first started, I was helping Susan. I was giving her cemeteries. And probably about a year after that, she asked me if I wanted to take over the website. I'm like, I don't know how to build a website. She's, oh, it's easy. Microsoft front page. If you know how to use a Word document, it's the same thing. It does the code, everything for you. What you see is what you get. WYSIWYG. I was like, okay, what is that? She's like, just download this, do this. You can do it here. Read this website. I'm like, okay. And she handed it over to me. That was 2004. And I was part of the Georgia Gen Web, the US Gen Web at Roots Web. And it's a big group of volunteers. People build websites for counties, states, subjects like yearbooks or enslavement records, and, just all kinds of websites. And I was like, well, this is pretty neat. And she's right. It was just like typing up a document. I typed pretty fast for some unknown reason. I don't know why. So she basically had biographies and her own personal family history because she was from here. So she just took her research and turned it into a county website. But there wasn't a lot of content like records. So I was like, well, that's what we need to get online. We need to get these records people are coming here for, like a will or a marriage license. So yeah, I went to the courthouse carrying my little laptop and just sat there and typed straight from the books. And then I got in with the judges and the clerks, and I was like, well, could I scan some of these documents? And they're like, well, what are you going to do with them?
Right.
I said, well, they're ancient, so they fall under the 100-year rule, so they are public record. I said, but I'm building this website. I'm helping people. It's not for profit. And they're like, well, okay, sure. So I brought just a flatbed scanner that you would buy at the office store. This is in the early 2000s, so it was not big technology. And they were, this thick and that big. And the courts would let me bring my laptop and my scanner in. And I would sit there and scan documents and just scan and scan and scan and sit there and type. And same thing at the library. All those obituaries on my website, I printed those.
Wow.
So let's see here. Watch out, kids.
Oh, wow.
Obituaries. I've got like 3 notebooks full. So every obit, every miscellaneous article, I printed it and paid for it.
Oh, wow. And that's something I wanted to ask about too, since it's come up now, is you don't do this for pay, right? You don't take on clients, you don't, and
every
you
once in a while.
Okay. You've paid for the website basically yourself all these years until recently when you did like a GoFundMe.
Yeah, I had to do some fundraising because times are hard.
Right.
And, I've been working 2 jobs, health is bad, and I just can't afford it. I mean, it's almost $1,000 just to have a few years worth of time. And I was amazed. Thank you everybody who donated, because I got it like within a couple weeks. You know, we got 3 more years. So
That was great. That was so
yep,
great to see.
yeah,
But I just want people to know that this is not a business for you. This is,
yeah. I don't
purely out of
I don't seek money.
generosity.
I don't have clickbait ads.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing on my website generating money for me in the background. It
Mm-hmm.
is completely free.
Mm-hmm. And was that a conscious decision? I mean, you just.
It was a pay it forward thing. I'm hoping one
Mm-hmm.
day someone's going to be out there for me. But it's also, it just became such a hobby where, instead of like reading books or knitting, this became
Right.
a little niche, because at the time I was coming off drugs and alcohol and I
Mhm.
needed a distraction.
This is almost like an addiction in itself, I
Oh,
think.
it is. Oh my God. Because
Yes.
I mean, if you really think about what I did, I mean, I carried all this equipment to locations and sat there like another job for 8 to 10
Mm-hmm.
hours, just typing,
Mm-hmm.
scanning documents. And I did this for several years all by myself,
Right.
no help.
Right. And
And
probably no validation because no one else was going to be saying, oh, this is a great thing to do because, people aren't used to it.
yeah. And at the beginning, everybody, and even now, because it's a website, they think I'm ancestry.com. They think
Right.
I'm making millions.
Right.
I've got 100 people behind me in the
Right.
office here. I even had an email like that. Could I hire one of your researchers? I'm like, no, it's just me. And it kind of gets frustrating. I know the people on the other side don't know this, but I'll get 5 emails with people asking me for help, and some of them I have to tell them no, and they're like, well,
Mhm.
fine, didn't mean to bother you. I'm like,
Right.
oh, I mean,
Right. Right.
I am one person and I have a job. I was
Right.
working 2 full-time jobs at another place while,
Hmm.
I was doing this. So I had 3 jobs
Right. Right.
and I
And this
wasn't
one's a
getting paid.
volunteer job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, yeah, it was rough. I had a little extra money, so it wasn't that hard for me to do all this and get the webs. And back then, the websites were free, through Roots Web.
Right.
You didn't have to pay for them. And over the years, the Gen Web turned into like this Pokemon thing. Got to have them all, I got
Uh,
to have 20 county websites, so I'll be important, and there are 20 sites with no content on them. Links to the archives at Roots Web for work other people did,
mm-hmm.
nothing original. And they're just vacant websites. And I'm like, what in the world? And then on the message boards we would have, people were fighting. We had this one thread that was 500 messages,
Wow.
people bickering. And I'm like, this is a volunteer thing. We shouldn't even be arguing over who's going to be president of this group.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I can't do this. So I purchased my own domain, and I wanted something that was short and easy to remember. And I was like, well, GlenGen is easier than Glen Genealogy. So I did GlenGen. And here
And
we are.
you don't do just Glenn County, right?
No, I do surrounding counties, and I help people that aren't even from here. I
Mm-hmm.
just recently helped a woman who's from Louisiana, and her family's from California and New York. She doesn't even live here. So a lot of people, they'll see a name, and because it matches someone in their family, they find a record in some other state, they think that's their family member.
I see.
And that's a stretch. Every once in a while, yes, it is. But
Mm.
normally, most families stay put for a long time. So
Right.
if your family's Louisiana, 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 they're not going to be in Georgia all of a sudden
Right.
and then
Right.
back in Louisiana.
Right.
So she contacted me because of a surname, and I'm like, well, I don't think it's this. And she shared her DNA with me, and I sent her on another direction.
Yeah.
She said she hired someone, a DNA private investigator. I guess there's people doing that now. And well, she's the one who told me that it was this surname and that, it's in Glenn County. I'm like, your DNA
Ah,
is not showing that. I said, it's
mm-hmm.
showing this other surname and it's Virginia. It's not here. I mean, either that or no one's been tested. I mean,
Right,
which is a possibility because it's African American. So it's entirely
right, right.
plausible that nobody's been tested yet.
Tested.
But she was having so many matches from this surname. I was like, there's just no way it's Glenn County.
Right.
But a lot of people I've helped aren't even from here, don't
Yeah,
even have
right.
family from here. And
Mm-hmm.
now that DNA has become a tool, I'm getting bombarded with requests. I mean, they're just every day I've got something coming in asking for help. And PSA, public service announcement, do not send me an email that says, what do you know about John Smith? Tell me everything. I get probably 5 a week of those.
Right.
And it's like, okay, if you only understood that I've got thousands of pages of web content,
Mm-hmm.
about 20 family trees online, one of them's got over 100,000 people in them. So you've got to really tell me where you saw my name in connection with the name you're looking for, and dates. Oh, dates would help.
Oh.
And it's,
Now, are we pretty blessed in this area for records? I know McIntosh County, the courthouse got burned, so that's a problem there. But how about Glenn County?
yes and no. Our problem is they're not accessible. We have a whole court that we can't even look at their records because, with the court documents, they were tri-folded. So they would be this little rectangle so they
Right,
put them
right.
in drawers. And our courthouse, it moved from the old building to the new building and things were just thrown in a basement or a closet. And they took all these little documents and just threw them in boxes. And these boxes are in like 3 or 4 different storage buildings around the city. Buildings where the roof's caving in. There's
Oh, you
vermin,
killed.
there's, bugs, everything. And when I first started this, I can't remember her name now, the judge that just passed away in Superior Court. She told me about this. It's like, well, can I go to the building and look at this stuff? She goes, well, no, we can't do that. We can't disclose the location because they're already in bad shape. We don't want someone breaking in and stealing stuff. But I'll bring a box to you. And I'm like, a box? And it's just some random cardboard box, and they're just thrown in there. They're not even stacked.
Oh,
There's no order, there's no rhyme or reason. And these are criminal records, divorces, adoptions, business records where, they're getting licenses or incorporating mortgages. I mean, just all kinds of stuff.
so those weren't digitized because for Liberty County, I've found a lot of those records on, Family Search and Ancestry, just not indexed.
No,
No.
I have yet to see them on Family Search.
Wow.
I just went there recently and saw the deed. There's a few deed books and like the records I've already transcribed, the pistol toter bonds, the medical licenses, the prescription books. They finally got all those online, but I've already, typed them up. These documents have never been scanned.
Wow.
Now, if they were recorded in another ledger book, it's possible there's a minutes book somewhere with them.
Right.
But I haven't seen very much of those online yet. So that's one area we're really lacking records is the bad side of Glenn County, the criminals
Yes.
and the divorces and, all the.
Those are amazing. For Liberty County, I've found them. I can find, the person was convicted, and then I can go in these loose records and just
Yeah.
find what it was for, even testimony sometimes.
Yeah. And I've got one person that's been pretty lucky. He's researching an ancestor. They had a shootout with the Glenn County Police on Blythe Island and liquor running and all kinds of stuff from Prohibition era.
Mm.
And he's been finding. He said it's been very hard for him to go to the courthouse and find these records because half of them aren't even there. And then getting someone to allow him to look at them, because a lot of the clerks there, they don't realize it's public record and
Right.
that you are allowed to look at it.
Yes.
So they won't let you because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And they, especially Superior Court, because of divorces and adoptions, those aren't public record. So, the judge in probate, when I was looking through the guardianship record, she's like, "Oh, you can't do that." I was like, "But this is guardianship for probate. This isn't adoption. This is just people handling an estate for children.
Right.
It says guardianship. You can't look at it." I'm like, "Oh, okay." They're online now, but
Line.
whatever.
Right.
It's like, this isn't the same thing. You're probate. You're not superior. This is not adoptions. There was one adoption in there, though. And it was kind of ironic because it was also recorded in St. Mark's church records. So I kind of got confirmation that this
Right.
happened. But yeah, there's a lot of records that I would love to get my hands on to look at. And presumably they gathered up all these records in these storage areas and put them in one place, and they're supposed to be scanning them. They're supposed to be in an archives, and everything is supposed to be getting digitized. And you are supposed to be able to send a request to the courthouse, and they'll send it to this little office, and they'll look up the records and send them to you. But I don't know if that ever happened.
Interesting. Well, that sounds like a good project for the Genealogical Society to pursue.
Need to investigate. They were supposed to have a building, I think it's Key Drive off their community road. And I was like, "Well, can you go in off the street and look for stuff?" And like, "No, you can't." I'm like, "Well, that's what we need, is an open place where people can go in and help themselves,
Right.
and not have
Right.
to rely on a clerk who, one, doesn't care, and two, who's so overworked, doesn't have time to do genealogy."
Right. Yeah, that sounds like it would be an excellent project for the Genealogical Society, just to find out the status of that. And
Mhm.
then, I mean, where it really needs to go is online, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I wish they would make some kind of archive open to the public where we can just go help ourselves and look. But that's just not in the budget. And I
Right.
think that's pretty much what happened when they started this. They started having their documents scanned in when they got all the computers in. And I think probate scanned a lot of their marriage applications and their marriage licenses and a lot of the loose records that they had. So a lot of that is digitized at the courthouse now. But like the marriage applications, they're not public record in Glenn County. So you can't, and the marriage license is just a certificate that tells you the couple married, but they also filed an application with their
Right.
names, their birth dates, their parents, where they're from, to sign that they're old enough to get married. And these documents are sitting in probate court, but you can't look at them because they give parents names and birth dates.
Which is, of course, why you want them.
Exactly. And now that, the death certificates have come online, they passed a bill recently to take them back
Yes.
down. So they may disappear, they may come off the internet before too long. And I think that's ridiculous, because I can go online and find out anything I want to know about you, me, and the tree. I mean,
Right.
one
Right.
public records website, $8, and I've got your whole life. I mean,
Right.
why
It
does
is
it matter?
ridiculous. And for anybody who will be listening to this who doesn't know, the Georgia legislature passed a law. It's supposed to protect privacy, but I think it increased the amount of time before the records are available from
100
like
years.
100, yeah, and then once 125. And
Yep.
I'm still finding the death certificates online, but I have been wondering if they were going to come off. I've been trying to go through actually for Liberty County and copy them off just in
Yeah.
case.
Yeah, I've tried, but I've got genealogy ADHD now. I get started and then, oh, that's
Yes.
neat, and I'm gone off something else.
I'm guessing you probably have so many projects that you just know need to be done, and
And
you
I've
start
been
them and stop them. And
yeah,
Mhm.
the mortuary book, the earliest death records we have in Glenn County, I got half of it online, and I photographed that book and started typing it probably in 2006. And here it is,
Right.
2020, and I haven't finished it because all this other stuff comes in, and I'm one person.
Right. And I know
I can't do it every day.
it's probably occurring to people to think, can they help you? Can they offer to help you? And I know I've asked you that before, and you've said that it's more work to coordinate a group of volunteers than it is to do the things yourself.
Well, it's not only that, but I have to reformat it too.
Right.
And I have to reformat it for the web. So that's like I have to type it over again. So it's really not a help, but it's
Hmm.
nice. But it's
Right.
just, if I was ancestry.com and had a team of people who had the formatting and knew how to
Right.
build a website, yeah, no problem. Type up some, I can get a lot done then.
Hmm.
But with just someone off the street, it's really hard to get them to do the things I do, because I format a lot of my text a certain way so I can recognize it
I see.
when I find it somewhere else.
Right.
Like people who steal my web content and then publish it in a book
Right.
without sourcing it,
Hmm.
or the guy that stole my whole website. He downloaded it and then uploaded it to his own server. This was back in the GenWeb days. And I told the president, I was like, listen, that's my website. And this was back when Susan Peterson still had a lot of content online. I said, he's got your work too. And she's like, well, I can't prove it. I'm like, well, I can, because I embed a copyright in my web pages. So when it gets downloaded, if you look at the
Ah,
code, there's copyright glenngen.com in there. And I told the president of the GenWeb, I said, go download this page or any one of these pages and look at the code. Sure enough, there it was, glenngen.com. I said, he stole my whole website.
wow.
And it's just ridiculous. This is a man that doesn't even live in the state of Georgia. Why does he need a Glenn County website? It just
And
blows my mind.
and that's what I've noticed, that your photos and all have the watermark over them, the
I've
copyright,
had
and
to do
that's
that.
the reason, right?
Yeah, and it's
Hmm.
a shame that I've had to do that, but they're all over Find a Grave, they're in people's trees. And it's great that you use them, but source it.
Hmm.
Put some so and so did this, because you're not going to be able to answer the questions when someone asks you about that photograph or about that document that you typed. It's like, well, did that really say this there? How are you
Right.
going to be able to answer it? You never saw the original because you didn't type that.
Right.
So yeah,
And
it's
I remembered from talking to you before that in doing this research, you've made a lot of contacts with local families and all, and you found some records that people have been holding that they, wouldn't have known to get to anybody.
yeah.
And so a lot of discoveries have come out of that.
Yeah. And another problem though is everybody thinks I'm a big conglomerate and they will not share with me anymore.
Oh,
They
I
think if
see.
they give me a photo or Bible pages or anything like that, that I'm going to make money off of it.
Right. Oh,
And it's
that's
like,
too
I don't
bad.
get paid. I don't make any money off
Mm.
of it. It's being shared freely with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I used to get stuff left, right, and center. Here, look at this. Look at, yeah, put that online. Now it's just like, well, why do you want to see it?
Right.
What do you want to
Oh,
do with
that's too
it?
bad.
And it's like, well, I mean, this is only interesting to the people who are related.
Right. Nobody's
You have
going to
that
pay big bucks
document from
for it.
1754, but George Washington didn't sign it, so it's useless. It's not worth anything,
Right.
you
Right.
know, unless someone famous or someone, that's been in the news has written on that piece of paper, there's no value to it.
Right.
I can't make money off of it.
Mm.
So,
And I know one of your most recent projects, I went to Hopwell Broadfield to listen to your talk about your research into the enslaved of the Hopwell Broadfield
yeah,
plantation, and Bill Collins was there from the Burning of Darien
yep.
Museum. And I'm curious both how you got into that project, and then also your process for when you approached it. Did you start out by looking for records? Did you start out by talking to people? How did you integrate those two things, the stories with the documents?
I was asked to do it. Mason Stewart, he's got a lot of hand in the Jewish community. He's written a couple books. He does a lot of the sea turtle walks and things like
Hmm.
that. I think he's worked for Jekyll Island Authority. I mean, he's like a jack of all trades, and he's president, I think, of the Friends of Hopwell. I'm not sure. Don't
Uh,
quote me on that. But because I've already transcribed the probate records and the enslavement records from J.M. Troop, who was an owner of Hopwell Broadfield, that information was already online. So Mason Stewart was like, well, you must know something about it. Would you be interested? I know you research families, and I've seen what you've done with Oak Grove Cemetery. I would like to do a program researching the enslaved people to present day people. Do you think you could do that? I'm like, well, I've already done it. I mean, there's Bill Collins is sitting right there.
right, right.
There are people still in town, that have descended from these families. He's like, well, just pick 3 people, and this is what we're going to do. And it's like, okay. And we found more records and got more information online and met all these families. I don't know if you stayed there for the whole meeting, but it was like a family reunion. I
It really
mean,
was. It was
it
very
was
moving
amazing.
and emotional.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
was just awesome. Um, I only got a few contacts out of it. I don't know if someone else got all the documents or what, but as you know, I recently sent an
Hmm.
email with all
Right.
the contacts I do have. But through DNA, I was already working with a family before Mason even asked me to do this. And I was like, this is kind of coincidental. And it was really weird because it was being hinted to me by other people probably a month or 2 before I was formally asked. Um, I had one of my longtime friends who's helped me, funded me, given me digital cameras and things like that to
Hmm.
do this. She's like, well, wouldn't you be interested in taking over Hoffel's records and just, being the master of all of it and being the go-to person? Someone needs to look into that. And I'm like, well, I got too much going on to
Hmm.
focus on one thing, and I don't have the education that they want for something like that. No, I don't think I want to do something like that. And then another person wanted to speak to me about it. I'm like, what is this about Hoffel all of a sudden? And then I got approached to do the program. So it's kind of really weird how it happened at
Hmm.
first. It's like something's coming.
Yes. Uh-huh. It
And
was
it
a really
just,
good program. It was really interesting.
yeah. And what I did is I took the enslavement records from a probate record, um, because the enslaved were considered property.
Hmm.
They're listed by name, sometimes age, sometimes gender, sometimes in family groups. And we took the inventory of estate for Troop and tried to see in the 1870 census if some of the names were still
Right.
grouped together to discern whether these were listed in family groups or how they were listed. And almost it looks like they're listed in families, from what we could find. But it was really hard because right there at the Altamaha River, a lot of McIntosh County families came across the river during the Civil War, and they settled all along the river from Hoffwell all the way out to Wayne County. So it's really hard in 1870 to know if these are folks that were from Glenn County, came
Uh,
over from McIntosh County, or were refugeed here from other counties around the area because the Freedmen's Bureau was here. They
hmm.
could just shoot up the river to St. Simon's to the Freedmen's Bureau. So it was a little bit of a chore to find the families after 1870 and get down to living people, because we have people that say, oh yeah, my ancestors from there, but they can't tell you how.
Right.
So it's like, well, how do you know that you really are from this
Yeah.
area? Well, it's always been told to me that way. Well, that's not always the true story, though.
Right.
you
Exactly.
know and some of the families found out that no, they were not. They were from McIntosh or even Liberty County. They
Right.
weren't from Hoffwell. They weren't from Glenn County.
Hmm.
And that's kind of interesting. And I don't know, I feel good when I show someone their story's wrong. I don't know why. I don't know why when someone tells me this, oh, it's this way. It's always, no, it can't be any other way. And I find all this stuff that says, oh,
Right.
yes, it can. And
It's
it's
like a
just,
mystery that, yeah, you're solving a mystery.
yeah, because a lot of people, they hear those family stories, they've been passed down for generations, and that's just how it is. And
Hmm.
when you go looking at records, it shows something different. And it's like, you got to be willing to think outside the box.
Right.
Maybe your story's true. Maybe these records are true. Maybe they're both kind of true. Maybe neither one's right. you
Right.
know, but
Right.
you gotta be able to let go of those stories
Right.
and be willing to accept a change, because genealogy is full of changes.
Yes. 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 Yes.
You can spend years going down this path, and all of a sudden a new record shows up. And it's like, oh my God, I've been after the wrong person for all these years.
Right.
And with
So,
all the stuff that's come online lately, I've been able to fix families that I've been stuck on, because it's just like, oh, I had it wrong. Oh, here's all this stuff now, the
it's just
newspaper.
amazing. Yeah. I'm so excited with Family Search. They're, I don't know where they are in their digitization project of, putting all the microfilm online, but I've seen so much more. It's just wonderful.
Uh-huh. So there's Milo.
Oh, hello.
He's got to be in my way, touching me.
Oh,
He thinks I'm
so,
eating.
so what's next for you? What's next for Glen Jen? What projects are you working on?
Oh, there's so many that I would just love to finish.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a lot more enslavement records I'd like to finish. The mortuary book. Um, Property records are really a big thing that I would like to get into, but all that's
Mm-hmm.
at the courthouse. I can't, we probably only got
Right.
a couple books online, I think. And, there's like 30 books that are the earliest history of Glenn County that, there's more than just property in there. There's stories in those records,
Right.
especially for
Right.
the enslaved,
Yes.
and it tells you about marriage contracts and, relationships between these families that you're not going to find anywhere else. And another lottery dream, I guess it is, is to purchase a lot of Civil War pension files for African American
American
soldiers.
soldier. Right.
That's an overlooked record for a lot of researchers. I guess maybe they don't know about it, or they don't think it would have anything. It's just military.
Right.
But for someone who was enslaved, they had to prove their identity somehow. So they have to tell the story of, themselves, where they're from,
Right.
who owned them. And there's going to be information. This first person narrative information. This is not a story passed down for generations. This is coming from the man himself,
Mm-hmm.
And, one woman that I helped, she thought her ancestor was from St. Simon's Island because he was over at Retreat Plantation, I think, after the Civil War and everything. And we found out he served and got a pension. So we got his file. He's from Liberty County, the Dunham family.
Oh, really?
And, I was like, oh no, this is a completely different person, and gave her the records. And when we did the Hoffel thing, I got to meet her. She just showed, I mean, it's probably been a decade since I talked to her. She's like, I don't think you'll remember me, but I asked you about my Harris family on St. Simon. I was like, oh yeah, I remember all that. She like, what? Like, she couldn't believe I remembered it. And I'm like, it was a really interesting story because it was one of those ones that proved you wrong, proved the family story
Right.
wrong. She took it further and got another pension file for the brother to learn more, to see what else he said. And she gave me copies of it and everything. But, it'll tell the life story of the person, who their parents were, if they were sold away, if they had several different people own them, if they have any children, how many times they were married, any siblings. I mean, it's very informative.
Oh,
And
that would be just amazing to get that for a family member.
And it's information you wouldn't find anywhere else, because the enslaved didn't have the paper trail that free people had, property records,
Right.
marriage licenses, church records, family Bibles. I mean, they didn't even have a Bible they could pass down to the kids.
Right.
So, there's a lot of information that's missed there. And I hate that they're so expensive. And now with COVID, I had money and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get all these, and there's nobody who will do it now.
Oh, no.
Like,
And
oh, well.
the deed records you were talking about, I want to a call out to, I can't remember her last name, but Tara, who did the Camden County deed records for enslaved people that you've got up on your site now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tara
she.
Fields is who she
Mhm,
was with the crypt. She was the Camden County person. I was Glenn
mhm,
County. She was
mhm,
Camden. She retired from research and moved away. She was out in Texas now. And I was like, it's a shame your website's gone because I mean, there's a lot of information
mhm.
on it. And she's like, well, I still have it. You want it? And I'm like, yeah. So I put it up on Glengen
Yeah,
exactly as she had it. It's got her crypt header and everything. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I can't really add to it because it's not my work. And to me, it's finished because she's
right,
no longer working on it.
right.
I do have people asking me about the content, and I have to tell them, I'm sorry, I don't know anymore. This is all I have, and
Mhm.
I'm not researching Camden County. I do if it leads me there, but I don't just go research other county families.
Right,
You know,
right.
if it takes me there, maybe, but otherwise, I don't.
So that's a good thing for people to know, that there are Camden County records on your site,
Yep.
that you can't necessarily help with, but they
Yeah.
are there at least.
There's family Jed columns on there. There's a group of newsletters that had a lot of information. Cemetery. I don't know if I got her cemetery work online yet because I wanted to reformat that to match the rest of Glengen. So I've got all the cemetery work from Camden County on my computer. It may not be on Glengen, but I do have it. So yeah, you can ask me about cemetery burials there. I got that information. News, I think she has some news articles. I mean, there's a lot of content there.
Good
So
there. So if anybody's interested in Camden County, check that out.
yep.
Um, Amy, I really appreciate your time, and I don't want to take too much more of it. Is there anything you would like to tell people before we?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it really. I'm not making millions of dollars. I'm not selling your history. um,
Well, I just really want to thank you both for your time today, and also just for all the work you've done over all these years, for just out of love for the work and generosity and wanting people to know more about their family histories. It's just a remarkable service that you've done for people
thank
who
you.
are researching coastal Georgia. And I hope, many years to come, that you'll be doing the same, and that the website will just continue to grow and develop. And I hope you'll let us talk to you again in the
Sure.
future, because I think there's a lot more to share.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I'm full of
yes,
stories.
yes, and I want to hear them. So thank you very much, and I'm going to stop the recording now.